Hey, deserved listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé the other way. Let's watch.
Just don't feel like hearing whatever mean thing you have to say.
I didn't mean to you. Why? Because this is a culture, that's why you don't want
No,
it?
it's also Jewish culture. It's not like I don't understand it, but I don't know. I'm just not ready to do it today. I told you I'm not ready, and then...
Okay, so for context, what's happening is he wants to have his newborn son have circumcision, and they were in the hospital, I believe, to have the procedure done, and they had the vaccines, and then they were going to do the circumcision, and she backed out. And she wasn't enthusiastic about it, or she had protested about the circumcision, and they had compromised, and he got his way. Circumcision is a huge topic, goes back hundreds of years, and there's a lot of misinformation about it. It could easily be argued that it is genital mutilation, meaning that you are just for this weird cultural reason, this backward old tradition, you are mutilating children. And there's examples of young girls who are being mutilated in this way in different parts of the world. You know, since that's not normal for Americans, we're shocked. But every day there are children with penises who are being cut for extremely dubious reasons. There are justifications, kind of. People will say, well, it will reduce infection. You'll hear other people say, as long as you are hygienic, there's no risk of any kind of infection. Other people will say they don't want their child to be bullied if anyone sees them. They want their child's penis to look like everyone else's penis. And then other people will say, is that enough reason just because of conformity? And people will say that things go wrong with the procedure sometimes, and some horrible things happen sometimes because anytime you're doing surgery, there's going to be a risk there. Opponents will say that it can cause all sorts of sexual problems. There's a debate. For this couple, they haven't really talked about it that much. He is saying that he wants to do it. She is saying that she doesn't really want to do it. She, I think, has anxiety sometimes, spikes of anxiety. And while she was in the hospital, I think understandably, she said, I don't want to do this right now, and I'm panicking, so I'm going to take my child. I mean, you parents out there, you understand, particularly when your child is a newborn, but maybe throughout your child's life, the protectiveness that you feel and the pain you feel on behalf of your newborn child is intense. So if you aren't on board, you know, it's not like baptism is one thing because that's the other thing that he wants. That's one thing. The child will only be potentially mildly annoyed with the baptism, but circumcision it's rough. You know, don't make any mistake. A lot of people, they're too young, they won't remember. I don't know if we know that. So it's normal for her to have anxiety since she's not on board. Or even if she was on board, it's normal for her to have anxiety. She walks out. What I'm concerned about on these reaction videos is not whether or not they do this or not, because it's debatable as to the pros and the cons, given that it's a cultural and a religious tradition and mandate to some extent. Putting that aside, how do they talk to each other? That's key. Because for him, he wants to do it. She's like, I don't know about this. She's having a moment. She's also saying, I've been having a really bad day, and I don't want you to be mean to me. Okay, what does she mean by that? Because we haven't seen him up to this point be mean to her, but maybe behind the scenes, or maybe she interprets it that way, or maybe her word for mean is, I don't want any pressure from you. So let's watch.
What does it mean? It's not you. She's doing this obvious.
It's my baby.
It's my baby too. What's wrong with you?
The same thing I'm asking myself, what's wrong with you?
Oh my God.
See, and now you start, oh my God.
So I think they're probably not in a place where they can speak about this rationally. If I were there, I'd say, take a break, give it a couple days, have a conversation about the circumcision later when you're not activated, and come to an agreement about it. I think there might be some kind of a time crunch given the tradition on this procedure. I don't know. But I don't imagine a resolution happening right now. But I don't know. They have some strengths as a couple. Maybe they'll be able to pull out of the nosedive.
If you're gonna be mean to me,
Because only you thinking you're yourself.
I'm only thinking of myself.
Yeah.
Really?
You're the one. Just you run away.
Yeah, that's not a helpful thing to say. You're only thinking of yourself. I get where he's coming from, but she's thinking about the child. That's what she's thinking about. She's also thinking about her point of view and not considering his or the country that she lives in. But, she's not being selfish. She's being protective of her child. So if I were him and I wanted to be healthy, I would say, look, we're not going to do it today because clearly you're not ready either way, whether it's today or anytime. So I'm not pressuring you. And I think it's great that you want to protect our child. And I get it. Circumcision is no joke. It's a thing. But it's very, very important to me in my culture that my son be circumcised in my religion. And we'll talk about this later. But and maybe there's some things that you could maybe we could talk to the doctor. You could get some reassurances or something. But for right now, we're okay. But we can talk about this later. But from the outside, if you're an opponent, if you're not for circumcision, politically or medically or religious-wise, you'd look at this situation and be like, Ariela should not give in, or vice versa. So, I get that there's a lot of feelings about this, but anyway, I'm more concerned about how they take care of each other than about exactly what happens here.
I didn't run away. I took my baby and I left.
አሪያላ በጣም እያበሳጨችኝ ነው ያ ባልሆነ ነገር ያው ዝም ብላ ለመናደድ እንትን እያለች ነው እየፈለገች ነው
I told you I didn't want to do this today. Everything always pressured me to do things I don't want to do. I told you could baptize and all this stuff.
So it's she's activated right now. So I'm guessing she has a negative spin on things for sure. But she's accusing him of pressuring her when another interpretation is he is making requests. They come from different cultures. They have different ideas about what should happen. And they are negotiating, and sometimes he gives in, and sometimes he says, I don't know if I can give in on this. And that's not pressuring her. That's asking, it's his son. And she doesn't seem to understand that. Now, people will have different ideas of this for sure, but she wants an equal partner as him. She wants him to be an equal caregiver, and thus she should recognize that he has 50% say about his son. She doesn't seem to be approaching it this way. Now, it's a newborn, and again, many of you might say circumcision is absolutely mutilation for no reason, and he's ridiculous. Okay. But, they need to have that conversation. She needs to, and because they had, on camera anyway, a pretty short conversation, and she was like, well, and she was being jovial and smiling, and she was saying, well, what if he grows up and he hates the fact that he's circumcised? And Biniyam said, I'll take responsibility for that. And she said, oh, that's great. Thank you so much. She was actually, okay, fine. If you take full responsibility, then okay, let's do it. And that was pretty much all the conversation they had. So for her to say, you're constantly pressuring me. Now, maybe behind the scenes, he is constantly pressuring her. I didn't show this scene, but he was pressuring her about food. That he was saying she's not eating in a healthy way, and he's worried about the nutrition of the son through her milk, and he was pressuring her to eat different, and because he's saying that she just drinks water all the time. And okay, of course, if you are observing your spouse in a situation like this, particularly as maybe not being healthy, then you care and you want to influence things and help. But there's a way to go about it that doesn't come across like you're in charge of her body. You're in charge of her diet. You just can't observe and say, I'm worried based on what I'm seeing about what you're eating. It's totally up to you. You have total control over what you eat. So, far be it for me, but I'm just going to throw this out there. So there's a way of talking about that, but that wasn't his tone. His tone was more paternal, and it had this vibe of, now that you have my son, I am now in control of you. Through my son, I have full control over my son, and you are the mother of my son, and I have control over you, or something along those lines of, now that we are a family, I have control over you. I can tell you what to do. I can control you. I can comment on these kinds of things because I'm the man of the family. I don't know if that was happening, but we've seen that before. I don't know about on this show, but definitely in life, where husbands, upon children entering the family, will feel this possessiveness, this right to be able to, because that's what they grew up with. That's the roles that they have in their society.
Just let me do things my own way.
I'm saying, just if he do it like early, the baby, he doesn't get pain.
We don't know that. You can't ask a 1 week old child, are you feeling pain? Plus, a lot of children will scream. I don't think anyone believes they don't have pain. Infants will feel pain all the time. Do we think somehow their genitals don't have any nerves in it? Because it doesn't make any sense. So that's something you either tell yourself to make yourself feel better, or I don't know. There's this general idea that like children can't experience trauma because they don't remember things. Because, very few of us remember things from a week old. Some of us do, actually. It's hard to know if those are real memories or not, of course. But the point is that, no, that it is a thing, and it's a risk. There can be infections. You can botch it. So it's not like this totally innocuous procedure. So I think both of them are coming from a place that's not understanding each other and a little bit of unreasonableness. Her side, she's saying, this is my baby and I'm going to do what I want. Like, I mean, if that's how you feel, now maybe it's because of newborn, and you're protective, that's fine, totally, I get it. But if your goal, which I think it is for her to create a family of equal parents, and right from the start, you're saying you have no rights, that's going to throw a wrench in him feeling motivated or feeling like he would be interested in being a material part of the family. So I get it, but there's a way for her to stand firm. Say it's like, no, this is a no deal. Like, no, circumcision, never. Okay, you have that line in the sand. How do you talk about it, though, so that you don't set this family precedent that says, this is my child and you are not really his father. You have much less than 50% say in this family regarding children. Now, if Biniyam was some total irresponsible father, then maybe that would be justified. But, I don't think we're seeing anything like that yet.
But early, late, whatever.
The same way for you.
My decision.
I'm thinking about for baby.
No, you're not.
You're thinking now your feeling. It's not about for your.
Yes, I'm thinking about my son. You're not thinking about him. You're thinking my culture.
So mocking people is not okay. You'll hear me comment on certain rules in communication where it's contemptuous, it's unfair, rolling your eyes, being sarcastic, and mocking someone's voice. When I hear that, in my, I was like, no. I don't know. I get it, but not okay. You don't mock people. If you have something to say it. I don't want to do this. I don't like you treating me this way. Use your words. Don't act like a teen. So that's not okay. But they're both accusing each other of being selfish, which I can see how they would see it that way, but that is not what's happening. I don't think either one of them is being selfish. I think, in fact, I know that both of them are thinking of the child, but they just have different ideas about what's right and what's wrong. And it's always interesting how the American, well, I guess it's not always the American, but there's this accusation often of, you're coming from your culture. Why can't you just let go of your culture? And often the person saying that is coming from a culture. This idea that, well, you come from a culture, but I come from reality is an American thing. Your thing about this is cultural and therefore irrational or changeable or flexible or maybe even ridiculous and backwards. My ways are normal and scientific and right. Now, again, you could make an argument that Ariela is right, that when you add up all the pros and the cons, circumcision is not worth it, especially when you look into all the science and you realize that modern hygiene is a lot better than it was back in the day when this became a mandate, perhaps for a good reason. So I have to consider that as we talk about. But there's a way to assert that doesn't alienate and set a precedent in this family that he has no rights, which is not a precedent that you want to have. Because if he's given that message, he has two choices. Either he can give in and say, okay, fine, I guess I have no rights. I can't say anything. It's not really my son. It's your son, and I'm just nearby. And therefore, I don't have motivation. I won't feel connected to the child. When push comes to shove, I'll just be in the garage and avoid. There's a lot of families where it's like that. Or I have to constantly fight with you to get anything done. I have to fight the central notion in this family that I have rights as a father, as a parent who's here and trying, and so you don't want a father to be in that situation. You want them to have a precedent of when we disagree about our child, we talk about it, we respect each other. Maybe we compromise, maybe we don't, but at least we start from a foundation of, okay, I understand you. Your rights are just as important as mine, 50-50. And often what happens in a situation like this, because I think Ariela is, at least temporarily anyway, digging her feet in, which is fine, then it would be a matter of pleading, of please, 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 let me have this one. I do not want to do. Let me tell you how I feel about my child. Let me show you the science about what could happen. Let me try to convince you, and I'm begging you, please let me have this one, or vice versa. So, and from the beginning, I don't know if I've been commenting, but I've certainly said this about other couples, and I guess this show is this is a central purposeful theme, is cultural and religious differences. And in the beginning, they were. Well, it's interesting, or, I wonder if we'll run into any cultural differences without thinking about it in advance, because let's say that this is a total deal breaker for the two of them. I mean, it seems to be in that direction. Shouldn't you have talked about that when you started thinking about getting married and having kids, Because if you come from the same culture, then you don't have to worry about as many of these things, because the assumption that the other person has the same values is more likely to be accurate. So wouldn't it have been nice, but so unheard of on the show, if, a year ago, they were like, okay, so we're thinking about getting married, and and if we get married, we're going to have kids. What are we going to do about the dozens of cultural and religious differences that will impact our child? Who's going to win? Are we going to negotiate? Are we going to flip a coin? Are we going to talk about it? Or am I going to win every time? Because I think Ariela, in fact, I know, because she said this as much, that she was going to win. She says, I'm going to move to Ethiopia, but my child is going to be raised the way I want my child to be raised, regardless of where I come from, which is Jewish culture. Her father's Jewish. Her mom is Christian, some sort of Christian. But anyway, she identifies as Jewish, was raised Jewish, I believe. And so she was going to raise her son Jewish, which, throws the circumcision thing into question. But anyway, That's not, now, if he's like, look, we agreed, she gets her way. When it comes to religion and culture, she wins. But I don't think they came to that agreement. So if they had those negotiations and those understandings prior to this, then it wouldn't have been such a problem. But because they avoided it, because I think they just figured I'll win, then here they are.
Dad, I'm proud. I want to do this. I don't give a about your stupid feelings of masculinity. Because I didn't feel comfortable with the situation.
But this is your feeling.
Yes, for my son. I'm not comfortable for him. I see him finally has some peace. He was upset earlier that he was drugged by the vaccine. I want to give him some time. I'm not comfortable with it for him. I don't have a good feeling of.
Okay, so if I was him, I would say, oh, I just heard I want to give him some time. Okay, so I'll back off. Because it sounds like she's still open to it. She just wants to maybe not do the vaccines and the circumcision at the same time. So, okay, so maybe he heard that word and he'll say, okay, I'll just give her a few days because it sounds like she's still up for it. I don't need to argue with her in this moment. But maybe there is a time crunch because in some religions, you need to have it on a specific day. I don't know if that's true for Biniyam.
If I don't have a good feeling, it means that maybe something not good coming from it. So I walked away. What did I say to you this morning? My stress levels is up here. I'm very, very, very stressed out. Much more than I can handle right now. And I really need from you to understand that I can't take any more stress.
Yeah, from the beginning, I've been seeing signs that she has a frequent anxiety spike issue, which is not her fault. There's nothing she can do about it. It's physiological. It just happens. And they, at times, seem to manage it okay. At other times, especially now, I'm wondering if Biniyam is starting to have this idea like she's weak or it's her fault or she has control over this. If I were there, I'd pull him aside and say, so there's this thing called anxiety. It's physiological, stress, and she might have some control over it in terms of the kinds of thoughts she entertains, but probably for the most part not. And it makes total sense that she would have a bit of an attack right now. And it would help the two of them develop a language so that she could tell him, on a scale from 1 to 10, where they're going into the clinic and she could say, by the way, right now I'm a 6. And we would spend a lot of time helping him understand what a 6 meant, that she and what she can do to bring that down to a 4, what he could do to help her bring it down to a 4, instead of what I think is developing where she has spikes of anxiety, which are not her fault and are just a product of her past or physiology or traumas or something. And he's now starting to become annoyed with it and judgmental of it. And that can be an aggravant that can cause her to feel more anxiety, and then the loop goes round and round.
I really can't. I need just 1 week just to relax. Like, I'm just too stressed, okay? I'm asking. I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to fight with you, but I am too stressed.
So good. She is now owning her feelings and saying, look, I don't want to yell at you. I am stressed. I need you to just back off right now. Now, if she remains in that space and never talks about it again, then that's not fair. But in this moment, that's owning your feelings. You're just like, I am freaking out. I want to yell at you, but I know that's not okay. But I don't know if I'm going to not yell at you if you don't back off, because just give me a breather here for a second, because that's usually what people need when they're distressed and anxious. They just need a bit of time to have their body come back down. And the other factor here, of course, is that she is a new mother and she gave birth recently, and her sleep is probably all over the place. Her physiology is all over the place. Moods can be greatly affected after birth or even before birth. Around, perinatal, there can be a massive increase in anxiety. Some people can have no anxiety, and then they have a child and they have a full-blown anxiety pathology, mental illness for 2 years, and then they don't have it anymore. So there's a lot of changes that can happen in the brain and the nervous system and the body around birth, which of course we understand. But we don't have to get into that. She has been, I think, suffering from anxiety for a long time.
Okay, let's go home. We can go home.
Okay, good. So he's saying, okay, we can go. Let's go home. It's great. It's a good resolution. Hopefully, when the both of them calm down, they can have a conversation that is respectful and assertive, listening to each other, and they can both come to an agreement about the circumcision.
It's so up.
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.